tell you a story about Jimmy, and I was at Randolph Country Club, so it was 1975, okay, at the time, and I was saying, there's got to be some way to figure out how these songs can go together, okay? And I have a mathematical type of mind, etc. So, which is probably why I did better in lighting than I did in theater history. And so I said, well, what if I just count the number of beats in a minute? Okay, so then I have my sheets with all my songs that I had at the time, with beats per minute. But I never told anybody. And one night I was in the booth with Jimmy. This is when he was upstairs, and I said, "How do you, mix records?" He says, "Well, I kind of hear it, and I, try things out. Some things work, some things don't." I said, "Can I tell you something?" I said, "What I do is I count the number of beats per minute, and I never forget the look on his face. He was just ready to go into a mix, and he just looked over at me, and he goes, 'That would work.'" And it was like such validation for me. Okay.
So that wasn't even a standard part of the whole process then.
No, it wasn't. Yeah. Okay. And then maybe a year or so later, a guy named Tom something or other came out with something called the Disco Bible, which had everything, so I'm not the only one that came up with this idea. Right. But I know I came up with it for me. Yeah. And I was so afraid of telling Jimmy that this is what I was doing, that I wasn't creative enough to just know it off the top of my head that this would go with this, right. Something like that. Right. You can know beats per minute, but if you put something funky with a cha-cha that doesn't go, it's not going to go. Right. So musically, it still has to work. It still has to work musically, exactly. It still has to be in a certain frame.
Now, let me ask you this real quick, because there's a whole current thing now that a lot of digital processes help with, called harmonic mixing, which is where you mix songs that are in the same key, complementary keys, like one up, one down from each other, that the software basically tells you what keys everything is in, because if you're like me, who doesn't have a musical background, you don't necessarily know by ear what key certain things are in.
I have a musical background. I don't know what key it is.
So you didn't care about so that's what I'm getting at, is that back then...
But if it didn't sound right, it didn't sound right.
Right. But it didn't necessarily have to be in similar keys or complementary keys. It just had to...
I think you're boxing yourself way too far in. It was sort of like you got to a point with DJs. It was like, I remember, I only play music you can freak to. I only play music you can do this to, hustle to, whatever. Right. And this is one thing about people like Dana and Jimmy and myself and Carol Mitro and Val, etc. We never ever stuck to one particular groove. Okay. Mm-hmm. Granted, gay clubs were known for more pretty type of music. Okay, but if there was a very good song out there that was funky, or whatever, we're playing it. Mm-hmm. We never ruled things out, and that's what I always found amazing is it started going to like the 1978 or so and on. Hear some of these DJs going, well, I only play funk, and I only play hustle music, and I only play freak music, and I only play music you can rock to. It's like, why? It's all wonderful, It's just that there's good wonderful and there's bad wonderful.
Right, and the format should be more wide open.
Yeah. And that's why I feel as though today, when I'm hearing new music, it's just more of the same. Yeah. It's just gotten very, very cookbook, I think, over the years. Back then, every song was very, very different from the other, especially when you're going back to the 45s. Sure. The 45s was free-for-all. Sure. No one had no one realized that they were moving toward a genre. Uh-huh. It wasn't until the Philly sound came in, and Barry White, and then, before you know it, Donna Summer, Gloria Gaynor, Donna Summer, etc.
So we're kind of like still in the middle. We're in 76, with Styx is happening, you're at Faces.
No, not yet. Actually, I went to a couple of places first. After Randolph Country Club, I then went to, okay, these could go one of the, I'm not sure which one came first. Okay, let's see, Candy Staten, what's that? So, okay, whichever came first, either Young Hearts Run Free or Love Hangover. We would have to decide that as to figure out. But I worked in a club in Revere that was, they were a banquet hall place, and they decided to make some money and do disco on the weekends when they didn't have something booked. So it was haphazard. Okay, so people didn't know when it was open, when it wasn't, blah 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 blah. But I did that place and worked with the people because it was kind of like a distant relative that was doing it. And back then, you used to invite all the DJs, to come, when you were opening up a club and things, and of course you'd make sure they had open bar too. Mm-hmm. But I'll never forget when I did that. I invited all these DJs, and unfortunately, this is the way I remember it, okay? All of the DJs just hung out at the bar and drank, okay? Except for one. And Jimmy Stuard stood next to my booth and watched me. And I was like, wow, Jimmy's watching me.
So it didn't make you nervous?
Oh, of course it did.
Okay.
Are you crazy?
Yeah, I would imagine it might.
But I wanted to do well for him, to kind of like prove myself, etc. But it was at that time that the song Love Hangover was out, because I remember when it came out, there was discussion, are we going to play this?
I just saw this on the Facebook
You saw
group.
This, yeah. And Jimmy Fournier was like, how can you not?
Right. Because it had that slow intro.
Yes, exactly.
Like 2-3 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Maybe before anything happens.
Yeah. And back then, first of all, we never stopped. Okay, the music never stopped. You went up, you went down, etc. There were very rare times that you would have a record end. There were certain records that had endings, and you would use that ending to then go into something else. But you didn't stop the music that was like up here to start Diana Ross singing the beginning of Love Hangover down here. That was kind of like, whoa, this is like new territory. Then there was a club in the BU area, okay, in Kenmore Square, called Mirage, and Joey Carvello worked there. Okay, you know Joey. And they decided that they were going to open up a gay bar behind Mirage. Okay, now Mirage was like, it was like, here's this building, and then all of a sudden there's like this alleyway underneath the building, and you walk down the alley, and here was Mirage, and they opened up this gay club behind it called the Elephant Room. Okay, and I was playing the Elephant Room. And that was when Young Hearts Run Free came out, because that was one of the first test pressings I ever received. The Elephant Room never took off, because the gays were not comfortable going there with all of the straight people going to Mirage. Okay, it just wasn't going to work. So then Joey ended up playing both clubs or something, I don't know. So I worked there. And then after that, going back to college, a friend of mine, Judy, who was one of the people that I used to go to the OS with, she was like too stylish for Bridgewater State College. She was incredible. She had a look and a whole thing that was just wonderful and perfect. But she was, because this was after we graduated now, she was friendly with, she was going to this pub in Cambridge, where Martinetti Brothers were going to open up a disco, and she was like, well, I have a friend who's a DJ. And so I went over there and introduced myself, and I got the job, And at the time, if this is the building, if this is Faces, if this is the room, it started out being 1/4 of the size, okay, in 77 and 76, 77, 76. Yeah. I can't remember now. Anyway, yeah, it was 76. Yes, it was 76, right, because 77, Jimmy was when Jimmy died.
Mm-hmm.
Over the years, okay, Faces started out here, then they broke this wall down, and it was this big. Then they broke this wall down, and it was this big, okay. By the time it got to this size, okay, we had a legal capacity of 2,000 people, okay. And we were the largest single room club in the Boston area, okay, because it was bigger than the one room of Lansdowne and whatever the Palace had over there as well. We had 3 dance floors. There was one here, there was one here, and there was a small one here as well. And the booth went from here to here to here.
Okay.
So I started Faces in 76 and left around 84, I think 84. During that time, okay, I started out at Faces, and interestingly enough, I knew the crowd that we wanted to attract, etc. So I made sure that the musical bed for the commercial on Kiss was Cherchez la Femme.
Mm-hmm.
And radio didn't want to use it because they weren't playing the record. It was like, you will. And so, but they ended up using it, and it brought in the crowd that we were looking for.
When you say the crowd you're looking for, I was going to ask you this. How much did you have to suit your playing style or tailor it to a straight crowd versus a gay crowd, or was it always this?
I played very gay music for a straight crowd, let me tell you.
and I imagine that it probably didn't matter as much then. I would think it worked overall.
No, because a lot of that stuff back then was pretty anyway. It was like hustle music, etc. But then you did have, the heavy hitters, like, trying to think right now, something that...
Well, I wondered about things like funk, like George Clinton and things like that.
No, I never played George Clinton.
Okay.
No, there are certain things that it's like, even when Faces got like this big, there were certain, I was definitely not, it wasn't my style.
Right.
It wasn't my style.
Because there was a whole bunch of records coming out at that period that struck me as more straight.
That wasn't me.
Right.
Okay. I play pretty.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would
so
say.
It was pretty.
I play pretty.
Yeah.
Okay. There is funk that I do like. People's Choice, do it any way you want, or things like that. BT Express, do it till you're satisfied.
Right.
Things like that. Yes, there were the funk songs that I did like. Okay, but there were some that were just like too over the edge for me, just not my style, and that wasn't what I was going to play.
Right.
And that was it. And I'll never forget, years later, Marcia Raven, or Masha Raven, depends on who's calling her, Catch Me, I'm Falling in Love. It's a very, very pretty song, up-tempo, high-energy type of song. I had these guys in Faces that, these big bruiser football players that had their arms in the air and just loving the song, you know what I mean? They just loved the music,
right.
Okay? Also, the other thing, too, is I was a firm believer, okay, that one does not play, in a straight club, one does not play to the men in the audience.
Mm-hmm.
You need to play to the women in the audience, okay? Because if the women are on the dance floor, the men will be on the dance floor, okay? And women have a tendency to like prettier music, okay? So it was basically though my style in general.
So even though we talk about a lot of the DJs did not want to play just one specific genre, there was still a style within that you had your own personal taste, and that did sort of determine what you did and didn't play.
Right.
But it could be from different genres.
Oh yeah.
But it had to still have a certain thing for you.
Yeah. I mean, there were certain songs. Suddenly I just remembered this. Out of the Clear Blue. I don't know why I did it, but I always said this would have been a great song if it was like remixed or whatever. And one night I think I blew Faces away and I pulled out Jethro Tull and played Locomotive Breath. It's like that did not fit in at the time, but they were like, wow, he's playing Locomotive Breath?
Right. But DJ started to do that kind of thing and explore playing like more rock-based things or other things. And
well, later on it turned anyway.
Yeah.
You know. But anyway, so I was at Faces for about a year and a half. Close, till 78. And at 78, then Darts was going to open. Okay, Darts was being opened by Dennis Fisher, who also used to be a DJ at Styx. Okay, DJs at Styx were Deejay, Dennis Fisher, Jeff Tilton, Valario played there, Vinnie Peruzzi played there for a bit. But anyway, Dennis Fisher was going to be opening up this club called Darts, which is now Paparazzi on Dartmouth Street there. Mm-hmm. And he wanted Deejay to play. He was going to have his friend Sid Goldenberg play, but he wanted Deejay. And Deejay was betwixt and between about leaving the 1270 at this point. At this point, Deejay was playing the 1270 because Jimmy Stuard had gone to 12 West in New York.
So Jimmy had moved to New York by then?
Jimmy had gone to New York.
What, was Styx still there at the time? So Deejay left Styx.
Deejay left Styx, and then it was Jeff Tilton was the main DJ at Styx.
At Styx.
At that point, right.
And can you just...
let's talk about Styx about it a little bit.
Yeah, and let's remind me when Carol Mitro comes into the picture, too.
Okay.
Just keep that in the back of your head.
Do you remember Chaps?
Yes.
Okay. You know where the men's room is?
Yeah.
Okay. Instead of it facing that way, it faced that hallway in the back there. That was the entrance to the club.
Yeah.
Okay. And the dance floor was literally, you know that little section outside of the men's room?
Yeah.
There.
They put a bar in eventually?
No. The bar ran the length over here.
Right.
Okay. So picture the bar where it was, and then enough room to maybe walk 3 across, and then booths to sit in.
Okay.
That was the club.
Yeah.
That was it. Okay. That was Styx. It was very, very small. Okay. And
that's your alarm.
yes. Wow, it's been that long already.